All right, so now we're going to address the topic of adding new sounds to your Moxf. Should you desire to do so, the machine has well over 1,500 sounds in it, and it'd be hard pressed to find something that didn't fit the bill, that wasn't what you wanted. But if you do come to that point where you say, I've just got to have some additional sounds, there are what we call sound libraries, which are available for the Moxf in its own format. You can purchase and download them from motivator.com. And yours truly, me, I am the author of the libraries that are marked as DCP Productions libraries. So I've got a DCP Productions Moxf library called Vintage Keys, which I put on a USB stick, and I put the USB stick in through the 2-device slot on the back of the Moxf, and we're going to take a look at how to load this sound library into it, so you have an additional bank of new sounds that hopefully you'll enjoy. So let's start with looking at the screen which is associated with the file mode. We're going to load in the library using the file mode. So assuming that you've got your USB drive inserted, in the 2-device slot in the back, you press File button, and you come up with this main screen, and you're going to press F3, which is Load. And now you have another screen, and you will see that at the top left, it shows what type you're going to want to load. And over here on the right-hand side, there are a couple of sound libraries here that are listed. And to load the library that you want to load, you simply just select and highlight the name. But let's go back to the file type and explain what these different types are. An all type file means that the library is going to load everything, all the sounds and any patterns or anything else that's associated with the library. In other words, all means all. It's going to load all of the data in the library. And this particular library, Vintage Keys, is configured so it automatically loads to the user 3 bank in the Moxf. You have to load sounds into one of the 3 user banks. You can't load them to preset banks because those sounds can't be overridden. So you will see the file type is, first type is all. Now, all voice means that it will load the voice, it will load all of the voices, but it won't load things that you set up like system settings or sample settings or songs and patterns. It will just load the voices in the library. Now you have a library a type called one bank voice. This is for, let's say, you want to take the library, and even though it's designed to load automatically to user bank 3, you say, I already have something in user bank 3, I'd like to load it to user bank 2 or 1. So you can use that mode to do that. And now you have voice. This means single voice. This means you can go and select the name of the library, and then if you just press the, select it and highlight it, and then press the Enter key, you can now view a list of the voices within that library, and from that list you can select just a single voice to load. So I know that the sounds for this library are located in user 3, so I'm going to scroll down and select that, user 3, press Enter, and now I see the list of new voices from the Vintage Keys library that are in user bank 3. And you can see by scrolling through each one of them, you can select the voice that you want to load. So let's say I want to load this voice 11, which is called Neoprene Hammers. It's a type of Rhodes sound. I've got it name selected. I go back over here. Now I can select not only the user bank where I want to load it to. It can be any one of the 3 user banks, but it can also be any slot in any of the user banks. So right now I'm going to load this voice to user 1, bank 1, and location 001 or A01. That's ready to go. And now I just simply go up here to this button SF1, which is directly underneath where it says execute. Press SF1. It says now loading. Now it's completed. Now if I go back to voice, and you can see that I am automatically at user bank 1, voice A1, and there's the voice, the single voice that I loaded from the Vintage Keys library. So let's go back now. We're going to kind of go in reverse order. We're going to go to the next file type to load, which is one bank voice. As I said, you might want to take the Vintage Keys voices, and even though they're pre-configured to load to user bank 3, I want to load them to user bank 1. So I go over here and I select and highlight the name of the library. I press enter. I know that the source, the bank from which I'm going to be loading is user 3. So I select that. And then I want to actually load it to user 1. This is the destination. Remember, this is source. This is destination. Source, destination. So, as with all load operations in the Moxf, once you've satisfied with where you're going to load it to, you press the SF1 button, which will engage execute. And now it's loading all of the Vintage Keys sounds into a different bank than they were originally designed to go to. Okay, so that's one bank voice type. Okay, so now I'm going to exit for a second, go back to the file mode. And now I have my type highlighted. I'm not going to go over all voice at this time because I don't really need to. As I said before, it's just to load if you just want to load just the voices and not the system settings, which are like what MIDI channel your machine is set to receive and transmit on, and some other system settings, what your velocity curve setting is for the keyboard and things like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and I'm going to go ahead and load Vintage Keys as an all file. This is going to load everything associated with Vintage Keys, including any arpeggios, custom arpeggios that come with it. There is one in this library. Right here, it's going to specify that I load it with system, and this I'm going to leave checked because it's designed so that the MIDI and receive channels will come up as being both the same, channel 1. And that's what I wanted to do. Now, you'll see that this is with waveform. Since the Vintage Keys library does not contain any new sample waveforms, you could leave this checked on if you want, but it doesn't matter. You could turn it off because there's no waveforms for it to load. So anyway, once I've got these set up the way I want, I go and highlight the Vintage Keys library name again. I press SF1 for execute. And now it is going to load the entire library. And it's going to load it to user bank 3. And you have to wait until all of these names get scrolled through in the display. And now you see the please keep power on message. And it says completed. And now I just press the voice button again to get out of the file mode. And I'm going to select user bank 3. Remember, here's user 1. We're in user 1 right now. So I use the bank select button. I press increment until I see user 3. And there is the first sound in the Vintage Keys library, which is Suitcase 1965. So that's how to load. That is how to load a library that does not use new samples. Now, let's say that I made a few changes. I kind of tweaked some of these sounds to my liking, and I'm going to resave this. I want to resave my all my edits, and I want to save them as an all file with a different name because I'm going to call it something like Vintage Keys 2 or My Keys or something like that, so that I will have my custom voice edits all saved for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the File button again, and I'm going to press F2, which is for the save. Now you see that I get the file type, which is all. That's how I want to save it. And I'm going to name it. I'm going to call it, use either the increment decrement buttons or the data wheel to select numerals or characters. And I'm just going to call it VK2. use the right cursor button to cursor over to the next character location. If you bypass and don't enter anything, that actually equals a space. And now I'm going to enter the numeral. And that looks good. So now all I have to do is hit execute. And now it's going to save. And I will now end up with an additional library on my USB stick with the name that I just selected. And there we are. There's VK2, just like I saved it. At this point, I should remind you that there is a way to do a couple of things. Before you load any sound libraries, you're going to want to save the contents of the keyboard before you load in anything new. It's just a precautionary measure, but it's a good idea to do it. So to do that, first I'm going to show you how to restore the factory settings so it resets the memory and everything to what it originally was when it came from the factory. To do that, you press Utility, and then you press the Job button, and then you see it says Factory Set, press Enter to execute. I'm pressing Enter. It says, are you sure? I say, yes. Enter. And it takes a little while. Not very long, though. And when this is done, the Moxf will be restored to its factory settings. And to see that, I can see now that even though I'm in user 3, it's now restored it to what the factory voice was set for that location, user 3 A1, which is large section, which is a string sound. So again, remember, before you load anything into the machine, you should first do a save. So you're going to save the factory settings. So now, once the factory settings are all restored and they're all good, I'm going to go to the File menu. I'm going to make a new I'm going to make a new library, which is essentially the factory set, and I'm going to call this factory. There we go. You don't have to check with sample on because unless there are some samples which you are going to be saving with your library, which are on a flashboard, assuming you have a flashboard installed, you don't have to have with sample checked on. So that's all good to go. I'm going to hit execute, and now we're just going to save the factory set as a library. And I can always go back and load that library back in if I get things too messed up. Or I want to do something as simple as load a single voice from the factory. There it is. And let's see if I call up and highlight factory, and I press enter. And I can see that I'm going to look at the user 1 voice, or user 2 or user 3 banks. Now, you might say, well, why doesn't it show presets? It's because the presets are never erased. They're always in there. So you couldn't load something from a preset since you can't save presets back out to a file. You can only save what's in the user banks. So let's say that thinking, what was in that user 1, that factory voice, the location A1? I press enter, and it was this sound, Everlasting Glory. And cool, okay, I'm going to load that again. And so I simply pick the bank and user location where I want it to go to. By doing that and then making sure it's highlighted, I hit execute and it loads the single voice to that location.